Hello everybody and welcome to today's video webinar. Unfortunately, we had technical difficulties, so we won't be broadcasting this live. Nonetheless, we will still be coming at you unleashed and ready to discuss today's topic about young entrepreneurs and startups in Copeland, as well as retaining talent here in Copeland and what we're going to do about it. Joining me today is Copeland's Mayor, Mike Starkie, Copeland's MP Trudy Harrison, and TEG's Group MD, Keith McMean. So thank you very much everybody for joining us. So,
good to be here, Oliver. Thank you.
You're welcome. There was a bit of delay there. We should all be used to Zoom by now. Anyways, so we hope you find today's chat interesting, insightful, and inspiring, of course. So let's dive straight into it. Trudy, I'd like to begin by asking, apart from the fact we're a very, very picturesque borough and there's lots to do and there's lots to, live and play, what do you think and why do you think Copeland and West Cumbria is a perfect place for startups as well as businesses to grow and prosper? What do you think are the main pros of working and growing a business here in Copeland?
Well, actually, I think, we shouldn't just brush past the natural landscape, because I think that is a big part of the draw to doing that. And I think so many of us over the last year or so have actually appreciated working from home. And being closer to our community, avoiding the daily grind, the daily commute. Not to say that all startups and entrepreneurs do work from home, but that definitely could be a major part. And it's obviously a real, incentive for being here in Copeland. I also think we're pretty well connected. We can obviously look at a map and realise that we're far away from London. I managed to commute Monday and come back Thursday. Thursday is always my happiest day. But actually, we're fairly well connected digitally as well. Always room for improvement. Really well supported, evidenced by the fact that you've got Copeland's Mayor here today, by our district council in particular. And there's a number of support groups. I'm thinking like Britain's Energy Coast Business Cluster, groups like that are eager to support entrepreneurs. Sellafield Limited is a fantastic neighbour, brilliant company, and has a real driving incentive to enable more startup businesses as well. So we've got things like RACO, the Robotics and Artificial Intelligence collaboration, all kinds of business support groups that want to support entrepreneurs. And I know in your new office, which I had the privilege of visiting you in yesterday, the work that Britain's Energy Coast, Sellafield Limited and Copeland Borough Council have done in creating that bus station with Pedlar's Restaurant, that's the kind of environment that we're going to see a lot more of in Copeland. We value entrepreneurs, we value the risk takers, the engineers, the people who have the ideas, the machine makers and smart machine makers. They are going to solve the problems of the future. You will be well supported, much needed, because we do need to diversify from the nuclear industry. But we can do that in spin-offs that aid decommissioning and many more kind of tech solutions of the future. I guess I was an entrepreneur in my late 20s. I went from being a childminder to setting up a children's day nursery, and it was a big step. And at the time, I researched so much about starting your own business. There's a lot of support out there, particularly for women and rural communities, and we all want to see more diversity too. So it's a great time to be thinking about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I echo your comments about the bus station. It is such a progressive development and it's a step in the right direction, which leads quite nicely on to my second question for Mike, which is about, obviously, we have many thriving sectors here in Copeland already, engineering, nuclear, and obviously tourism and retail. What do you think, with the council's messaging at the minute, and they promote young entrepreneurs, especially with, the work Jenny Brumby's doing, especially around the young entrepreneurs market and such like, do you hope that we can also retain creative talent that will perhaps, move away, and we can actually create West Cumbria a bit of a hub for many sectors, and where we can, we can be based here, but there's all sorts of opportunities to expand. And there's, as Trudy said, all of the groups. What do you think, what are your hopes actually for, where we go as a borough, and what do you think is going to help that?
Well, it's broader than that. I think we've got to create an environment that attracts new young talent, because if you're going to bring people from away to what you've got available here, that in itself will retain some of the people who've already lived here. So it's a mix of them both. We've got the, Trudy mentioned the bus station, which is a fantastic development. It brings in entrepreneurs and leisure all together in one place, and being able to secure Barclays Eagle Lab in there and the support that they can provide. It's the first Barclay Eagle Lab outside a major city. Is a major coup for the town. We've got hopes with some of the other land that's been acquired through both the council and through Beck to turn Whitehaven into a digital grid town and develop a university campus within the town for up to 300 students. Can it be done? Well, we've already seen at West Cumbria Medical Education Campus from a flat start that brought over 100 students into West Cumbria from all over the world. If we can bring more students in, it brings footfall into town, and it supports the retail and the leisure options. But we're also dealing in a different world. COVID's changed many things, but it's going to change working practices hugely, and that's for new startups or for current businesses and the way they employ people. There's a lot of roles in the council, as an example, that have traditionally been office-based roles. When I'm thinking about revenues and benefits officers, it's very unlikely they'll return to the office because there's greater efficiency in them working at home. When you're looking for senior officers in the council in areas like finance, revenues and benefits, those jobs are open to people now all over the country because they don't need to be in the office space. And the flip side to that as well is, Trudy talked about the commute to work. I spent many years, almost 20 years, living and working in big cities, and where the M42 in Workington was a fantastic road, and the M25 in London, it used to take me 2 hours to move 10 miles. And you'll see a lot of that getting eradicated now, as people will rebase how they go about doing the job. So yeah, we're running the entrepreneurs market. That kind of joins up a little bit with the fact that we're buying up empty premises on the high streets, because it gives a natural progression. We want to buy up a number of the empty premises and drive rental rates down to give businesses a greater opportunity and make the town a more competitive place for people to come and do the business. But we've got to turn Whitehaven into a destination town, and that's where entrepreneurship meets leisure, meets tourism, where they all collide together for a collective benefit. So the entrepreneurs market, is just one of the angles that we're looking at, and there's been a great response to that. We're offering free space to people. We're offering support to them, and it's a first step on the ladder, potentially developing the business. The bus station supports that, but there's all sorts of diverse opportunities right across Copeland, and what we're trying to do is make sure we join up all the dots, and even the large acquisition of the Leconfield industrial estate, it all plays into that. And I think over the next 18 months, a lot of people will see all these sort of things coming together and how they complement each other.
Marvelous. Yeah, I think what I picked up there is also the sense of collaboration, businesses joining up, for the common goal of making West Cumbria, Copeland and Whitehaven, a place on the map and a destination. And I think what you touched on there, entrepreneurship isn't just, a lot of people associate entrepreneurship with modern digital businesses nowadays, but actually entrepreneurship, you can find it in everyone and anyone who's running a business, whether it be a shop, a hairdresser's, or a cafe. To take the risk and take that plunge into business it should be championed, and that's why we're having this discussion today, to hopefully inspire others who have hobbies, interests, passions, to turn them into your hustle, or want for a better word, a business. So yeah, no, that's perfect answer, Mike, really. So Keith, in the era of COVID, obviously we've realized how remote we can work, and that is actually going to probably play to a lot of startups' advantage in the coming months, in the coming year, that yes, we can have a lovely office here, but we can also have global connections. We can also work with people. We can be based out of West Cumbria and have a name for ourselves here, but we can still work with people from all over the place. What do you think, how has COVID positively impacted the business community, in particular with the remote working and building connections?
I think there's a couple of things, to be honest, and I'll echo what the guys said. I think a lot of it comes down to the sort of the will and the wherewithal to actually do it. And I think sometimes where we can get lost, especially with remote working, and as Mike quite rightly said, I think one of the things about working remotely, it depends what you mean. If you're office based, you're working remote from home. A lot of people now are going to be working from home, coffee shops, the bus station, you know, there's lots of little hubs where people can go to now. So I think as long as you've got a laptop and you've got a phone, then you can pretty much start a business. And I think one of the great things about Whitehaven and Copeland is that we really are leading, I think, in Cumbria of what's going on entrepreneurship. I think the area now is starting to be seen as a bit of a beacon for this type of thing. One of the things that we pick up really quite quickly, especially when we speak to people, is, and they'll say to us and the team, oh, well, I'm not an entrepreneur. And as you alluded to, Ollie, before, everybody's got a wee bit of entrepreneurship in them. But I think what can happen is, because of like Dragon's Den and things like that, people think you've got to have a ready-made idea. You don't. One of the things that you can do is you can validate your idea, and you can do that from anywhere and validate yourself, you know, because a lot of the work that we do, we find that not everybody's going to be an entrepreneur. But one thing about thinking like an entrepreneur, it makes you far more employable. So one of the things that we want to see is, yes, definitely entrepreneurs are the engine room of the economy, and that's going to be proved over the next 5 to 10 years, I think, because what's happened with the pandemic, what would have happened naturally across probably 10 years has happened across 18 months, 2 years. Everything's just been condensed into this time. And I think it's forced people, and especially the larger organizations, to think differently. And I think that's what we're going to see. So I think, yes, you're right. I mean, because I'm on Westlake Science Park. That's where our offices are. And we can see that there's lots of people working from home, or maybe you only come into the office for 2 or 3 hours at a time for a meeting or to do a Zoom, you know, because it's quieter and you've got everything in your office. But I think what's going to start to happen is people are going to utilize phones and tablets and laptops far, far more than what they've ever done. So I think it doesn't really matter if you work from home or you work remotely. The thing that the pandemic's done is there's lots and lots of opportunities out there, and that's been proved by people who have started businesses, up from, you know, cake businesses, hairdressing businesses, right up to one of our directors who now supplies PPE tests, all sorts of different things. That business was started 16 months ago, and now they employ over 300 people. So the opportunities are there. I think all you've got to do is you've just got to start to think about what's your passion, what gets you out of bed in the morning.
Definitely, yeah. I think that's quite inspirational, actually, Keith. I'm sure Mike and Trudy echo that. That's quite inspirational. I think to anyone watching as well, it's just about being proactive with your ideas. If you do have an idea, there's always somebody to chat to about your ideas. And what me and Keith actually always say is, if you have got a business idea, probably best not to tell it to your family and friends and ask for their opinion, because it'll be one or the other. It'll be the, oh yeah, that's fantastic, or no, that's not going to work, just because they're being biased because you're your friend or your son or your child or whatever. So I think it's really important to speak to an outsider and get their perspective on the current market and what is that going on in Copeland. Is the unique, or can you do it better? Can you do it differently? Because I think a lot of people don't want to try things because, you know, the market is too saturated. But on the other hand, if you stand out and you have a unique story and you have a unique product which is crafted differently, people are going to buy into it straight away. So I think people perhaps shouldn't be feared that there's already a similar business in the area. In fact, you know, make that your challenge to be just as good as them, if not better, you know, and there's room for everybody to grow. And I think Copeland is a fantastic borough that is starting to become extremely progressive in the business community, in other industries. And we are leading the way, and we have led the way for many, many years in collaboration and working together, and that sense of, you know, getting the job done, which I really vouch for in Copeland. I think it's a fantastic borough where everybody knows everybody gets along. If they can't help you, they'll pass you on to somebody who can. So I think that's really unique to us. And Trudy, nicely moving on to my second question is, we often find that a lot of people growing up, they have fantastic ideas and they have fantastic aspirations, but they almost immediately want to move away. What do you think, and how we're going to overcome this challenge of, you know, retaining the talent? I've mentioned that a couple of times in this Zoom, but it's really important because I think, you know, people starting out businesses are often worried that there's not perhaps people to work in that sector, or they're going to be alone because they're one of few with that passion in the borough left, because everyone moves away to Manchester or Media City or London or whatever. What do you think is going to be important moving forward to retain that talent, or not necessarily limit them just to Copeland and say stay here, but actually inspire them to be in Copeland? What do you think is going to get that message across that they should stay here, and if in fact their industry isn't here yet, challenge that and make it be here?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and something I'm battling with my own eldest daughter at the moment, because she very much believes to pursue her dream of big city lawyers, she needs to be in London, and that's a difficult one. But, you know, if you're making something, I think provenance is often so important, especially when it's maybe more homeware, artisan, food and drink, that kind of things. And I think the importance of Cumbrian or Lake District provenance, and indeed British and United Kingdom brands, is so important, and also for export potential as well. So make use of the Department for International Trade and all of the information that is available about future customers around the world, where markets are heading, and how you can get support with trade envoys and things like that. So that's for the export side of things. I think more locally, it's back to those groups, because right here in Copeland, yeah, we are close-knit. I'm almost guaranteed every meeting I go to, I'm either related to people in the room, or I'll at least know them by the first name. I think that's a particularly wonderful thing that I enjoy in West Cumbria. But the support network that will surround you, because this is what we want to enable, will kick in if you ask the question. I do think you're so right about not relying on friends and family, because they know what you've always done. They don't necessarily know what you're capable of. When I mentioned to my mum and dad that I was going to stand to be the candidate for Copeland's MP, both my parents were horrified. If I'd listened to them, I wouldn't be sitting here now talking to you, Oliver, to be honest. Definitely take the advice of the Chamber of Trade in your area, or definitely, you know, the work that Copeland's doing in proactively driving down the cost of renting businesses, renting premises, because actually I'm afraid they're 2 and 3 times more expensive than elsewhere in the northwest of England. But they're proactively trying to sort that out. So keep talking, keep communicating. And this is really difficult. Somehow find the strength, find the courage to walk through the door into a networking room. When the country does open up again and we have those opportunities, I know how awfully daunting that can feel, to walk into a room where you know nobody. But just ask questions. When you get in there, find somebody who's maybe like you on their own, and just ask a few questions. It is difficult. I'd love to help more people get over that, because I think that's what holds people back too often.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is that fear. We had this conversation yesterday about me popping in early yesterday. I wasn't so confident about going and approaching people because they were already in their bubbles chatting. And I think that's something a lot of people fear, is walking into the room 5 minutes late or just on time, and everybody's already in their groups chatting, and you're just stood there like a lost part. But I think as long as we, you know, let people know that actually people are very, very friendly here in Copeland, and everybody's always up for a chat and a catch up with what's going on. But yeah, I think, you know, I vouch for that, to be honest. I think everybody here can. You know, when you walk into a room full of people who are already chatting, it's very nerve-wracking. But once you get over that and you start to exchange business cards, I still love business cards. Once you exchange those and you get people talking, and who are you, what do you do, your confidence just is boosted, you know, tenfold, which I think is fantastic. But you just have to take that leap, don't you, really? And there is loads of networking groups. There's all sorts of different ones for female entrepreneurs, for young people, for people in diverse backgrounds, etc. But I think, Mike, what I'm leading on to now is, obviously we've discussed quite heavily about the bus station and we've touched on the young entrepreneurs market. Do you think everything combined and what else is planned, you know, on the harbour and with retail, as we've discussed, do you think we're going to see, you know, how the nuclear sector is thriving here and the engineering sector? You know, we see like LEL Engineering and Forth and Responsive, how quickly they have risen to success in this area. Do you think we're going to see that success replicated across different sectors, whether it be, you know, graphics and animation, or, you know, these new niche industries? Do you think in social media, do you think we're going to see that happen now because of, you know, we're talking to people right now and saying, you know, this is the best place to start a business, or one of the best places? Do you think everything combined, all the initiatives, everything you're pushing with the council and what Trudy and Keith are doing, do you think we're going to see other thriving sectors? And if so, you know, what are your hopes for that?
I certainly do. You know, when I got elected back in 2015, the first time we ran 2 conferences to get the message out to the wider world that Copeland is open for business and a good place to do business. And you know, how do you measure that? Well, you know, 6 years down the line, the council are earning over £1 million more per annum from business rates than what they were back in 2015. So, you know, that in itself, because we don't get all the business rates, we just get a percentage share of that. But, you know, that was something like a 50% increase of where it was in 2015. So that's a huge surge forward. So I don't think we can underplay the amount of business development there's already been in the area. You know, it's easy sort of to be, you know, to look at the high streets, you know, to look at King Street and Whitehaven, there's a lot of empty units. But that's an issue that's facing most towns in throughout England at the moment. But the big units, and it looks like business is on its uppers. You know, the reality is there isn't any less businesses in 2021 as there were in 2005. There's actually more. It's just that some of the big retailers, but they've left every town, and I think, you know, Whitehaven's got to stop, or we have stopped, you know, a long time ago, pursuing the large retail dream. You know, Marks and Spencer's, Next and River Island, they're 8 miles up the road at Workington. They're not going to set up in Whitehaven as well, and the offer's got to be different, and it's got to be new. So, you know, that's why we're looking at you know, setting up a digital grid in Whitehaven, setting up a more modern destination type of place in town. So, you know, that opens up tourism opportunities, hospitality opportunities. And, you know, I'm a regular on the nighttime scene around Whitehaven, and that's massively improved over the last 4 or 5 years, and continues to do so. You know, with the bus station opened on Tuesday, so did the Royal Standard, so did a refurbishment in the Number 11 restaurant, a refurbishment in the Strand pub. You know, people are upgrading the premises, they're creating different offers. So, you know, there's huge opportunities. You know, people do go away, they will always go away. You know, there's university courses that people will continue to pursue, and they'll meet other people from other parts of the country, and they'll get into relationships that, as much as anything, dictate where they'll be as their employment. But, you know, the pursuit of bringing a university campus and students into Whitehaven as well, you know, it all adds to a kind of dynamism in the town, and the footfall that we're trying to create, and it brings in future potential entrepreneurs. You know, one of the things that's kind of worked against entrepreneurism in the area is that there's so many good, well-paid jobs in the area. You know, as the borough with the 3rd highest average wage in the country, you know, why would people in those roles take the risk of leaving that role where they're already comfortable to take a chance of starting up a business? You know, in other parts of the world, they have no choice. That's what they've got to do. Well, that's why we've got to drive diversity. You know, Sellafield are in decommissioning mode. That's going to change. But with that, it brings a whole raft of new, and in some cases, it will bring better opportunities. And we've just got to be on the front foot. We've got to see the future faster than other parts of the country, and make sure we do what's needed to be done to make sure we grab the opportunities of the future before anybody else does.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think when you talked about the high street and actually how there is more businesses, what I'd also like to quickly touch on is the fact that people like Jared Richardson and Richard's Wine Shop, they've actually seized the opportunity in COVID to launch online. And that just shows you can have your bricks and mortar, but also you can seize the online and digital opportunities. There's no point ignoring that. And there's no point ignoring change in the way the economy is going and the way consumers buy. But in fact, you know, have the best of both worlds. One of my clients in Clayton is actually opening a premises purely as well, half and half as the stockroom for their e-commerce website, but also as a cafe. And that's taking up a unit in Clayton, but that's showing that actually they're massive on e-commerce, but they're still keen to have that physical premises and have people come in. So I think also the message can be that you can still have the best of both worlds, but make sure you don't ignore the new digital opportunities, because that can accelerate business, you know, as quickly as anything nowadays. And also you can still have your lovely store and have that, you know, experience and create that experience for customers and local people, which would obviously encourage people into the town and things. So yeah, I definitely agree with everything you've said there, Mike.
Well, you know, we're also pursuing the Shop Local campaign, and you know, you get the cynics and the critics say, well, there's nowhere to go to shop local. You know, that's a complete myth. And the more you do shop local, the more you retain, and the more you get. You know, we've got in one of our towns in Millom a perfect example. You know, that's where the shop local campaign was born and was initially developed. And you know, you can go into Millom and you can virtually buy anything in that town, and there's hardly an empty unit in Millom. And you know, through COVID, where there was restrictions on travel and they couldn't get up to Millom and Whitehaven, you know, the businesses have really upped the game to fill that gap, and the retaining a lot of that business as we start to move into newfound freedoms.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, Trudy, I'd like to ask you about Millom, actually, and why you think that is such a fantastic community. I mean, the name that springs to mind, and I'm sure everybody agrees, is Jenny Brumby. She's absolutely fantastic for what she's done for her area, and now what she's doing for Copeland, you know, with the council and on behalf of the council. I think people like that really do drive communities forward. And I was in Millom about 12 months ago, and I was absolutely amazed at how busy this high street was in terms of units being open and people occupying them. How do you think that's happened in Millom, and how do you think perhaps we could actually see that happen, you know, right the way around the borough?
Oh yeah, I've said before, if Carlsberg did towns, you know, Millom is just a great example of the combination of community spirit and definitely providing the essentials of what you need and some surprises. But actually, I remember when we first moved to Bootle, I hadn't really visited Millom before. And I was amazed because you could go into the estate agents, look at a semi, but also buy yourself a panini. You could go into Booze Busters and also get a pint of milk. You can go into the shoe shop and come out with a vase. And they really have maximized shop space and different products complementing each other. And the customer service, so you can go into Power World and your washing machine will beat you home. So good is the customer service there. So it really is a fine combination. But actually, I think it's driven by the isolation that Millom faces. And it's one of the potential arguments not to connect the Millom to Barrow with the bridge. I've heard that many times. I'm not sure whether it's right or wrong. But I do think that the isolation that Millom has faced forever has forced Millom people to be pioneering, to be entrepreneurial, and to create solutions to their problems. But I also think there's something just incredibly, it's like patriotism on a small scale, where people from Millom really do look after each other. It's a wonderful community to be part of. It's my most local town. And as Mike and I know, if there's an issue in Millom, woe betide any community leader that doesn't get on their side, because you'll go into one of those meetings, it will be packed, you will be berated if you don't get on side of the people.
And that's absolutely wonderful. I think if we can replicate Millom everywhere else, we're onto a winner. We really are. I think Millom stands out as such a fantastic community. But yeah, thank you for joining us. I'm going to finish by asking Keith and Mike and Trudy their one line or one sentence piece of advice or tip or trick for anybody starting out. So it doesn't have to be in the capacity of a business owner. It can be more just generally. So I'll start with Keith, if you want to give us your kind of one liner or one sentence of advice.
I'll split it into two. just to follow what the guys have said. For me, it's don't wait. You know, this is the perfect time to start a business. It really is. And I think the thing is as well, as the guys have alluded to, that you're not alone. There's lots of help and support out there in lots of different guises. There isn't just us. You know what I mean? There's lots of people. But what I would say to anybody that's watching this, think of a shop, an empty shop or an empty unit as an opportunity. It's not an eyesore, it's an opportunity. So grab it as quick as you can because it will go.
Perfect. And Mike, yours, please.
I think you just need to have a clear vision and a determination to make sure that it's realised. I think you've got to, you know, what you want to do, you know, begin with the end in mind, know what you want to achieve, and then you've got to have a determination to overcome every obstacle to get that done. But, you know, like Keith says, there is significant amounts of help available. And, you know, the bus station now is just one example of that.
Perfect. Thank you. And Trudy, what is your one-liner or sentence of advice?
Gosh, so tricky to put into one line. I would say do your research, understand and manage the risks, and remember that you are the only person holding you back.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Mike, Keith and Trudy. We hope that this has left everybody watching very inspired and ready to take on their next challenge, or if they've been pondering on an idea for months, to do your research, but quickly get on with it because there's no time like the present. Anyways, thank you very much for joining us.